Sauce. Hello, I'm Niels. Okay, just a quick reminder. If any question you have, I will be reading chat. I have it open here. So just shoot the questions in that you have and I will try to answer you. This talk is mostly going to be about the process. I will not go too much in depth of every topic, but if you still have questions of this afterwards or during the talk, feel free to shoot. I love interaction, so please interact with me. All right, let me kick off. I'll quickly introduce myself. So I'm Niels. I'm 27 years old. I'm a digital product designer in the Pocket. I do this on a freelance base, and I'm also working 1 day a week as a visual and concept designer, either for a partner or for myself. I also do a lot of side projects. And oof, same age here. Sorry about that. I feel old though. I'm sorry. Some background. I did 3 years of art school. Then I did 3 years of Achtervelde Hogeschool, Ghent, which is focused on graphic design. And my last or second year of graphic design, I came to the realization that interaction design is a thing. Then I joined OSOC and I turned into an interaction designer. So this is where I am right now. Last year, interaction designer, I wanted to really work for myself and get real life experience. So I started to being student self-employed. If you're interested in knowing more about how to do that in Belgium, I will definitely help you. Well, I can definitely help you explain how it works. But it's a very nice thing to do if you want to be self-employed, to start it off when you're still a student. Mitsa is young like a tiger. Yeah, she definitely is. She definitely is. All right, so side project, of course. I've been doing open source code. Oof, you could say again. I've been doing it for 7 years, which is too much, but okay. I've been doing this as a student, so I've been in your position. I've been doing student coach, also, and then now this is, I think, my second or third year as a coach. And next to that, I do Bezet de Vreed, which is one of my side projects, and is basically trying to give World War II information in a more fun way to younger people, younger audience, I guess, to give them more insight in what happened and to keep the history alive. I try to show this project because this combines all of my skills. So basically I do conceptualization, which is this. I do print, a lot of print. So the book is printed, the box is printed. I try to do packaging and stuff as well. But I also do digital UI design, and I try to really go to the edge of that. So there is an app, an AR app included with the book, which creates visualizations of 3D, like an airplane, like tanks and stuff like that. So this is really what I do. This is also what I do at In the Pocket. I work on mobile app teams and on the AR team. So if you have any questions about that, shoot, and I will try to answer them. I did make the first version of the app myself, but not the final version. And there's a good reason for that. It sucked. So I think it's very good that you try to do things yourself and you try to prototype as much as possible, because the experience wouldn't be where it is if I didn't try at least some stuff myself, but I also had help, of course. It's actually not that hard to make it, especially now. Back in the days, stuff like AR Foundation and AR Kit were not available. Back in the days, it was more hard-coded. It was very awful. But now you can really like plug and play it in Unity. It's very, very easy to do. So if you want to create an AR app, there's a lot of tutorials out there. I did it in Unity as well, actually. So Jan just asked me, what language did you try first? I just did it in Unity as well. But like I said, I just followed a lot of tutorials, plug and play. Stuff I got struggling with is basically that the 3D model would appear, but it would not disappear again. I could not do anything with it. It was facing in the wrong direction. I couldn't rotate it. It was very weird. I don't know. I was very happy to get help there. All right, but now to the actual talk. I'll try to not talk too much about myself here because that's not so interesting. But right now, you're at your content phase. So you had the first week of also, which you probably like went full on in the conceptualization mode. But there's like a time where things become tangible, and that's where you start off with wireframes. Does anyone know what a good wireframe is and what it contains? Okay, I love this response. Text as meat, or Jan says scribbles on a paper, fast. Marie says content. Yeah, it's all it looks zero style definitely. Yeah, if you're a visual designer, you don't like the way they look. That's fair. Lines and boxes. Yeah, that's pretty close. And what's the goal of a wireframe? Do you know what the goal of a wireframe is? Why do we make wireframes? Nobody has an idea why we make wireframes? Oof, I see everything streaming in. The structurizing. First, I don't have to do this presentation, you guys. You already knows. So yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. It's define structure and hierarchy in your content and your interface. And it's also made to completion of flows. With other words, really getting a grasp of the whole concept and trying to visualize it for the first time. Um, with this in mind, I'm going to show you a couple of wireframes and I want you to think if and why they are good or not. So I'm going to show you a couple of them. This is a wireframe I found on Google. This is a wireframe I found on Google. This is a wireframe I found on Google. And this is a wireframe I found on Google. So much Google praise here. Which of the four wireframes I've just shown you do you think is a good wireframe? I'm going to give away that, yeah, the go. You can do the go. I just see that there is a lot of people who have seen this dog before, but that's kind of funny. Everyone says three. Well, you, either this is too easy or you've seen this before. It has to be either way. Yeah, come over here. Two. All right, two. I'm going to quickly go through them. So three is actually the right answer. One, Jan, please no, please no. Don't do one. What's the problem with one? Why is one not a good wireframe? Yeah, Jan, you can tell us now. Yeah, it's absolutely true what Jan says. There is too much focus on the design already. You're already looking on how things should look, how things should be shaped, the visual aesthetics of it, and a big problem here is the color. Because when you test this wireframe, you will not be focusing on the structure behind it. You'll be focusing on, I really don't like green, or I really don't like red. I want to have like a more darkish interface, and not a white interface. This is a really struggle. So try to avoid styling in your wireframes. This is the second wireframe. Why would this not be a good wireframe? Anyone? Don't be shy. No one? Okay, I will just go ahead then. The problem here is that the design phase has also started. So, oh, I see something running in. Let's focus on sound. Yeah, definitely. This is a very similar one to the previous one. And that's what people often do is like, I design a pretty wide an interface, but then I turn it grayscale. And then it's suddenly a wireframe. But that's not true either. If you turn your wireframes into grayscale, you're still designing it. It's much better that you focus on lines and boxes, just like Jan, I think, said earlier. That's completely correct. This one does the line and box thing, but as you can see, sometimes they still use the grayscale. You can do that. It's arguably sometimes a good idea, but the reason why they do it here is mostly for the selected states. like you see there's something pre-selected and stuff like that, that might be useful because it's more focused on the the interaction part and not for a visual purpose. And then we have this one, and this is something we see very often in wireframes, and that's that people don't bother using actual labels and text in their design. I know it's pretty hard to use actual text, but try to at least use some competitor text or something if you don't know what the text is going to look like. Um, that will help you definitely in getting the structure right. This doesn't mean you have to write a whole description of everything you make, but it can help you with labels, because if you're showing this to a client, for instance, there's all lines, they have no idea what the functions do or where they should click for what, or what are the options on the screen. They don't know how to react with it, even if you know it. So try to clarify that as most as possible. So this is basically a repetition of what I just said. So whoa, I'm rolling over my tongue here. Try to stay away from any types of styling. And digital is also, wow, there is a lot of things. Lorem ipsum. Yes, Jan, that's an option. You can use lorem ipsum for your descriptive text, but don't use it for labels and stuff like that, because that's still confusing and people don't know what that is. So what I usually do when I'm designing for headers or summaries, yeah, you could do that, but consider how hard it is to use actual text. Definitely. You started the war. Definitely you did, Jan. But like you see here, when you use actual text, you will not be stuck in your design with, like you see on the top with the welcome to the cake factory, because you will have already thought of bounds of your text. You will know how much text there will be. For two people will be very happy here. One is the developer who has to make this, because they will run into this issue and they will not know what to do with the text. For instance, does the title become two rules, or is it going to become smaller, or is it going to be abbreviated at a certain point with dot dot dot, for instance? What do we do with this? So this is very good to have in hand when you're designing it. But on the other hand, the actual user will be very happy as well, because the design actually fits for the content, or the content fits the design. It depends on how you're looking at it. So it's very important that you use actual text for stuff like this. Okay, so how do you start making this? Low fidelity. It's very, very easy to start off with wireframes. And what we usually do is really start on creating certain flows, like a main objective. Try to really skim down on what you want to do or what you want to reach, and create one singular flow. Like, for instance, how does a user add a photograph to a post? That can be a complete flow. Try to make that complete flow, and try to avoid every side effect, like every side feature. So don't start making login with Facebook, login with Google. Please leave those things out as much as possible. Try to focus on the main objective in each low fidelity flow. These are actual low fidelity flows of an app called Stevie. Does anyone know Stevie? Stevie unfortunately sunset, and it's now VTM Go. I'm not very happy with that, but yeah, that's my opinion. But Stevie used to be like a Netflix, but for Flemish programs, basically. And these are actual sketches of the interface of Stevie. Like you can see, we actually used abbreviations of episode in Dutch, and titles of the channel and stuff like that. We didn't use lines and stuff like that. That's why you can navigate through these sketches. They are very ugly, I agree, but that's the purpose of a wireframe. It's quick, dirty, and it helps you explain your concept. A lot of things that you do in your interface are reoccurring patterns, and you don't always have to reinvent the warm water. You can look at competitors who do similar things, but you can also look at pattern resources and things that, and a lot of things you don't have to overcomplicate, but because they already exist. So if you go, for instance, to mobin.design, this is mostly focused on mobile, by the way. you can look by categories. For instance, I'm making something about news. Here's all apps that are focused on news. So you can really look up a lot of things already via this website. Or I'm looking, for instance, for a pattern. Let's say I want to have a calendar, for instance, on my application. How do calendars work in other apps? And then you get like a whole overview of how calendars work in other apps. You can even make combinations between stuff. Like, for instance, I want to know how a calendar works in a financial app. There you go. It's very, very easy. It doesn't only stick to patterns, but it also can be like elements. For instance, what does a card look like in different type of apps, or action sheets? How do they look like? And you can really explore a lot of things here. You don't always have to reinvent the hot water. Okay, good. So as I said, there's a lot of existing patterns, but you're very, very free to introduce a new one. What you do have to keep in mind is that these patterns aren't made like in the minute, if you know what I mean. So you really have to test them out and see if patterns work. Like Tinder did a couple of years ago with the swiping left and right as a new pattern, and they tested it throughout. And the swipe thing is not the only way how you can use Tinder. Tinder also has the buttons of like and dislike, which still works and is a reoccurring pattern that people know. So don't try to introduce new patterns without having a backup as well. All right. So we have Mobin, that's a really nice website. We have UI resources, which is a really nice website. We have patterns. They basically all do the same thing. Um, don't do what Snapchat did. Yes, definitely. Snapchat has a lot of hidden gestures. And the problem with that is really that if people don't know how to operate hidden gestures, they will not be able to use your application. There is a very steep learning curve in that. Disgusting. Do you not like the way this looks, Akil? I feel so old using that app. Yeah. Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, Snapchat. It's just so unfortunate because the experience with Snapchat is very, very steep to learn. It's not easy to use. So be careful that you don't. Snapchat was built to keep old people out. Ouch. Well, it's pretty effective at that, but I think it will also keep out younger people, Jan. Um, thank you for that. Next to no, I feel old. Thank you. But next to that, my teacher told me, that, well, there is some truth in that, I think. But I would definitely say it's still a steep learning curve for younger people as well, because if you never use something, you will not be able to use it either way. You'll have to learn it at some point. Or people with little will to learn. I gave up this. Yeah, that's true, Meet. I agree to that. I know how to use Snapchat and I'm old, so that's that. I'm lazy. Yes, yes, definitely. All right, I will continue. Sorry about that. Um, next to like the recurrent patterns, you have interface guidelines, and it's really really interesting to look through Apple and Google's material guidelines because they have like literally everything covered within their ecosystem. For Apple, human interface guidelines is mostly focused on iOS, of course, and on macOS, but it's very interesting to read. Material guidelines is broader than that. Material guidelines is really the whole design language and how to work with color, typography, and navigation within their system. But it also explains a lot of concepts. So if you really want to learn more about interface design, these are things you should really read through. It's very interesting. All right, so now we have a wireframes created. Is this a moment where we start coding? Can we like get started right now on yeah, that's correct, Jan. I think you've watched this one on before. It's time to prototype and validate. Prototype. Wow, prototype and validate. Prototype. That's a new word here. Yeah, because you've got your idea, and you're very happy with that, and it's your little baby right now. But everyone's looking like, maybe that's not the best idea. Prototype, fuck that. Yeah, definitely. So put it to the test and see if everyone loves your idea as much as you do. And usually it's not the case with the very first idea. You still have to scope it a bit. It's a rough diamond. There will be good things in there, and like Pete says, they will poop on your baby, so be prepared. It's this is also a reason why I really recommend sketching on paper and don't spending too much time on creating your wireframes as much, because you'll be much better at letting go your first idea when they poop on it. At least you didn't spend 3 weeks on creating it and then they poop on it, if you know what I mean. That's a lot of poop. Sorry about that. So prototype validate. So we're validating our wireframes, and this is an image you will often see on the internet. And it's very cliche, I guess, but it's also very true. People will choose the way of least resistance in this way, and even if you want to force people into something by design, they will try to avoid it as much as possible. They will just go for the best way for them to use it. Um, so definitely look if your prototype meets their needs and wants. And that could save you a lot of days of unnecessary development work for sure. What we usually do at In the Pocket is we test with 5 people, and we say that we'll generate approximately 80% of the very low-hanging fruit insights. So in that case, you already recovered a lot of things from your tests. And you can do this through a prototype. So how do you make a prototype? I've got an overlist of a couple of prototype tools that would I like to discuss with you guys. The first one is Marvel. It's Marvel app. Usually I use this one in a physical context, but you can also use it in a digital context. It's very easy to use. This is why this is something that everyone can do. This is something you can learn your grandma. Marvel app is very, very easy. Then you have the digital design tools like Figma, XD, and Sketch, which are a bit more learning curve, but you can still learn them easily. They're still very doable. And then you have the very extended prototypes, and they allow you to add code or databases and anything like that into them. For instance, like a data visualization tool, if you want to prototype with that. But those are very extended and usually paid. I'm not going to go over those because I think they go way past the point of open source code. I will focus on the first two here. I see Jan said, Marvel, take pictures of your wireframes. Yes, Jan, don't be too quick. This is my next slide. So as you can see here on the right side, like Jan said in the chat, Marvel as an application which you can use to photograph your wireframe sketches. And it's super, super easy. So you take photographs of everything you draw and you import them into the app like you see here. You can easily crop them within the tool. And then you can draw boxes on your screen. And these boxes are basically the zones where you can interact with. So for instance, we want to make the sports tab here tappable, and we want to lead it to the second screen we photographed. We want to do this by using a transition called fading, for instance. Then on the second screen, we want it to return to the previous screen by clicking on the home again. So we have our home and we have our sports. There we go. And we want to do this with fading again. So now we can play the prototype. And there you go. When you tap on sports, you go to sports. And when you're tapping on home, you go to home. This took literally 30 seconds to make. It's that easy to create a prototype. And it doesn't have to take you months or weeks to create it. It's super easy. These templates you can download from Marvel app itself. Like you can see in the background here in the presentation, these are like mockups you can download from the website. You can download the application for free. You can use Marvel app for free. It's really, really nice to use. All right. So as you can see, there was a part of them that has prototype transitions in there. So when you link to a new screen, and this is mostly a mobile as well, you have some kind of transition going on between screens, and the transitions are made to create spatial relationships between screens. Because, for instance, when you click on something and something goes over it, you know that this is a different hierarchy level within your interface. And this will help you understand how features work and what people and what they will expect when they click on something. For instance, when you click on a video within this screen, you will always expect that to open in the same way. And this is why prototype decisions are important. Now you have to do this right, though. This is an example of something we did in MindColruyt, an application for a supermarket in well, all over Belgium actually. Um, there is like the button which says "Add to my list" on the bottom half, and when you tap on it, you'll see that the transition starts from the bottom. Um, this is because the button is at the bottom as well. So it's centered in the bottom position. So you expect something to happen from that position as well. Yes, yes, like Meet says, please don't share this into the outside world because these are all projects that I cannot really talk about, but I am talking about either way. So please don't talk about this and don't share this to anyone outside. I really love to share things with you guys. Yeah, I really love to do that because I think it's very valuable for you to see them. Um, and it's hard to give you examples which are not in the business context, of course, because these things take time to make. All right. So that's how that works in Figma, for instance. So you have all these preset things there to create transitions. The same thing works in Figma. And I know a lot of you guys use Figma or XD to create prototypes, which is really okay. And you can also use that. And I will quickly go through how you can do that. Are there any questions so far, actually? I think not. Okay, I will just dig in. Why are you so awesome? I don't know. Am I awesome? Okay, thank you very much, Meet. I will quickly dig into Nielsflix. Let's pretend that we have an application called Nielsflix. I'm making the new Netflix. Yeah, I'm in that level. I've designed this very quickly. Don't take this as an example for a decent prototype because it's really not. The point I'm trying to cover here is how you can make a prototype. So what I've done here is basically created connections between the screens. So I have a detail page with a movie called Belgica. I have the homepage, which has basically a feed of different categories and has the top categories on above. And I have a third page, which basically gives me a list of the of the of the top movies. What I wanted to do is when I tap this open, that the second screen opens from the bottom up and shows me the list. On this one, I wanted to shove in from the right side on top of my normal content, and I wanted to close when I click on the back button again. I've already set this up, so I'm going to show you how it works in a prototype. So when I click on stuff, you'll see that the transition happens because, yeah, that's how I made it. And on top part, the same thing. So basically you get a list and you can close it. It comes on top of it. Die Hard, yes, Die Hard. I don't know which year I made. I think this is made in like 2018. So I'm sorry for the being a bit old dated. The Dark Knight series are the best movies. Don't say otherwise. Yeah, I'm not going to respond to that. But they are pretty good, definitely, definitely. So, but how do you do this? It's very easy. So basically, you have your component which you want to link up in Figma. You have this little bullet sticking on the right side. If you don't have that bullet, it means that you're not in the prototype section. So you have three sections. You have code, prototype, and design. Design is to make it look pretty if you're working on that design or to create the style of it. Prototype is to create a prototype, logically, and code is to extract everything you need from it in CSS or whichever language you want it to be in. When you choose prototype, you can get like the little bubble and you can click on it and link it to a different screen. For instance, I want to link this one to this screen, and then you get the options. So you can say hovering or clicking or whatever you want to do. You can say what it has to do. Does it have to swap with that? Does it have to go back? Does it have to navigate? We'll stick to navigate for now. And to which screen. Of course, if you use this little bubble, you already have this set up. Then you can choose how it's going to do that. And there's a lot of methods that you can do. If you just want it to do nothing, you can choose instant. But do keep in mind that this means that you'll have no spatial relationships with the previous screen. What we want to do here is that it moves up. And if you want a little preview of what it's going to do, you can hover over this box and you'll see what it's going to do. So I want it to move in because when I click on this, I want this to move in. So I'm choosing move in, and I want it to move in from the bottom. So that's what I'm saying here. When I'm going to see this in action, you'll see that it works. Of course, the rest of it's not set up, but it's all the same basically in Figma. All right. Then we have the little carousel thing. It's pretty interesting if you want to do a sideways scroll, and I've already set it up in this one. So if you want to be able to do this with scrolling, this is also an option. It's very easy to do as well. So what you basically do is you create the list that you want to have. I'm going to quickly detach this from where it's detached now. So you can, for instance, make a list like this. You can group them and create a symbol from them, and you can place them into your design like so. And then you can choose here scrolling behavior. If you don't make a component of it, you will not get that option. So I'm going to show you, if you don't do the component but just select them, you'll see that there's no scrolling option. If you created a component, which you can do by selecting a couple of items and clicking on this little button over here, you'll create a component. I will be discussing a bit more about components and everything in tomorrow's talk, so don't be scared if you don't understand what a component is. It's basically a group, but it's more intertwined with other screens. So here you can choose what that component needs to do. If you choose horizontal scrolling, you will get this result. There you go. So that's a basic 101 in Figma to create connections between screens and to prototype very easily within Figma. Do you have any questions towards how to prototype in Figma or in Marvel? Or is everything clear? All good? All right, let's continue. Would you show the code for the last? The code? What do you mean the code? You mean if it's actually going to code something? It's not going to do that. It's just going to too much info, but clear so far. Okay, please let me know if it's too complicated or if you want me to explain something a bit briefer. Position absolute, yeah, definitely. It's a design program, guys. Don't expect everything. No, 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 no. Exactly, Jan. No, 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 no. All right. So you have your prototype set up. Yeah, this is just for prototyping needs. This is not for actual making code. That's so true. Prototype tools are only made to really prototype with. Don't use the code that it generates. Don't be stealing my job. Yeah, we're not there yet, so don't worry about it, Jan. Don't worry about it. All right, so testing. We've now created our prototype, but now we have to go testing our prototype. I'm going to give you some brief tips about how you can prototype, how you can test your prototype, but Meet's going to elaborate on this soon. She's going to announce you how you're going to do it. Yes, exactly like Meet says. So you can use it to test if it's valuable and afterwards write the code because it's hard to pivot afterwards. Definitely true. You don't want to spend all the time working on your code to make something work, while it's much easier to create a quick prototype of it and see if if it works in advance. So what's important to do while you're testing is you have to test with real potential users. For instance, if you're making an application for elderly, don't test it on a student colleague because that's not going to give you the right insights. Um, Next to that, you want them to have a goal. For instance, you don't want to tell them like click on this button, click there, click this, do that. No, you don't want to do that because then you're just guiding them through the prototype. You want to say, for instance, with application I just show you, I want you to choose the movie Belgica, and I want you to watch it. That could be a goal, for instance. I want you to watch the movie Belgica, and then you give them the interface. So they will have to look like, how can I come to that certain point in the prototype? They are going to tap on places that you don't expect, and this is the point where you really have to observe and ask a lot. Observe. That's not the word. Observe and ask a lot of why questions. Um, because this is going to give you the insights that you really want to know. Why do they tap on this, and why did they think this would reach their goal? If they can give you if they cannot give you an immediate answer to that, you can continue the why questions, like why did you click on there? Did you expect something to happen there? You can rephrase until you really find the actual reason behind why they tapped on a certain spot. I remember the user is always right. It's never the fault of the user that the prototype or the product doesn't work for them. That means that the product is not well made, and that needs to be adjusted to their target audience. So when you've done your user testing, it's time to close the flows and merge the flows and close all gaps. So basically throw all these little flows together and create one big prototype. This will help you to see how they navigate throughout the whole concept from a certain flow to another flow. For instance, if they're taking a photograph that suddenly they want to change their profile, how are they going to move from the photograph flow to changing their profile, for instance? This is a step we normally do in the process, but we will skip for ULSOC. Normally, you turn your low fidelity wireframes into the high fidelity wireframes, which focus on a more realistic context. This is the moment you do want the input of like, do I like this color or not? Because the flow is already set properly. And how does this look in transitions, for instance? Like you saw before with the first transitions, these transitions in the new prototype can be much more extended, and they can actually feel very realistic as well. But of course, we're not doing this during also. All right. That was quite something, right? Are you still following? Are you still enjoying this? All right, perfect. Very glad to hear this. It's tough in this environment to really get the feedback because normally I do this in real life and I can see when you're bored and when you're not, but I'm very happy to hear that is still interesting to you. This is visual design. So we just did the whole process from wireframing or concept until prototyping and testing that concept. Now we're going to the visual design of the process. I'm seeing a lot of comments coming in, so I'm really trying to read them. I can almost follow because it's the second time. Yes, Jan, I'm very, very glad to hear that. The good thing is this time you can rewatch it. So if there's something unclear, you can rewatch it, and you're always welcome to ask me questions when you're rewatching this, of course. Visual design, more than delight. What do I mean with that? Visual design is not just coloring in wireframes, and that's something that often happens when you create your first prototypes, is that you're just going to try and color them in, give them a color. But this is not really how you should approach visual design. The best way to do this is to have a simultaneous step with your prototyping phase, which is focused on creating an atmosphere, a mood. And how do you do this? You can start creating a mood with a mood board system like Pinterest or Dribbble and stuff like that. And you can really collect everything that inspires you there. what's always good to do is really look at your competitors, like who's in the market and what are they doing, what colors are they using, what visual aesthetics are they using, and really place them together. Pinterest or what? Yes, I feel Pinterest could help you definitely. It depends on how you want to use it. Pinterest has inspiration, but you could also just use the platform Pinterest to throw your designs on, so you have a good overview. I think you should really check with your team what tools you want to use to really create a mood board. You can even use Miro for this. It works everything. Just whatever you prefer. But to get like visual inspiration, the Dribble and Pinterest are good. But do consider that those things are usually made from a visual aesthetics point of view. They're not made from a user interface point of view. So they are made to be pretty and not to be functional. So keep that in mind when you're making this. Pinterest uh, helps if you want to create a mood board with your clients as well. That's completely right, Meet. It really helps. There are really insane designs on Dribbble. That's so true, Jan. It's really true. But do consider those are made without constrictions, and that's not realistic for a lot of things within interface design. Yep, exactly. So how you do this, I see that there's a lot of transitions in this file which are not correct. So if you see the screen skipping sometimes, that's not me, that's the transitions in the file which are not very useful. So go out with 5 screens. What I try to do here is don't use actual screens of your design, but think about 5 very prominent screens that would appear in your design, in your application. For instance, I'm making a job offer application and I want people to be able to schedule an appointment, then I know, oh, there will be a calendar view, there will be a confirmation screen, there will be a listing of jobs, there will be like a form to fill in. Think about these type of screens and try to make them visual. Don't focus too much on the content on this side. This is really made to get you to get a feeling with the vibe and the style of your application. So this is not meant to be realistic. Then you put your wireframes next to your visual design and you try to apply the style that you've just created in your visual identity to your wireframes. So this is the moment where you throw them together. Trash Panda is functional and nice design too. I don't know that website, but I will check it out later, Jan. Definitely. Is it this application? All right. Name dropping. Oh. I'm not gonna respond to that then. Okay, I will check it out later then. All right. This is basically the same as we did before. It's very important that you keep track of not using too much placeholders in these designs as well. You actually have to use your actual wireframes at this point and use that. So when you've decided to place your wireframes next to your actual design, like your designs that you've created, you can really start looking for things that are similar to each other. For instance, these are 5 wireframes we created for a medical application we've made. And as you can see, there is tons and tons and tons of buttons there. But do they really all need a different style though? If you know what I mean. There's no need to create a different button for every single of those buttons. It's way more important that you now start analyzing your wireframes and seeing where things could be components. And components are repetitive patterns, basically. So these buttons can all have the same visual style, but a different icon in them, for instance. And then you have the right side with the 3 green buttons. Those maybe, all those 4 buttons can be the same as well. So when we turn those things into a similar design, you can see on the right that all these buttons get the same style, even the plus button, which was black in the original design. So there is more consistency there, and you don't have to create a design for every single screen. Do keep in mind that all these things have different states and you have to design them as well. What I try to do is create a great big overview with all the different states and well, talk them through with my developers as well. For instance, input fields have a lot of different states. Try to design them up front and as a template. So don't, well, just really design one of them, so you don't have to design every single input field that has the same behavior, for instance. You'll end up with something like this. So it's a big overview with all the different states and all the different buttons, which can be used throughout your whole application. So it's basically how developers have been working for years, but designers are now picking up on it. So thanks to the existing components we already made, we don't have to make every single screen. What you really need to realize as a designer is that whatever is in development is what will be in the actual product. And that is what users will use. Everything you design in your design file is pretty and it's good. And it's good that you have that to help your developers. But everything that's in development is what's actually out there. So even if everything's nice in order on your design file and it's not in the actual development, the user will never see that. And that's a shame. So really try to think about where you put your efforts and really focus on reviewing together with the developer instead of creating every single design of every single screen. Is there any questions towards components, visual design so far? Everything clear? Devs with design knowledge. Those are my favorites. Devs with design knowledge. Love devs with design knowledge. Okay, I think there was no questions then. All design and designs would definitely, yes. There's a sweet spot in between them. I love both of them, definitely. They're great. Magic there, definitely magic. If you, as a developer, have design knowledge, you're gold. If you're a designer with development knowledge, you're gold. So do keep in mind, try to go cross experience so you really know how to work together well. This is what my next talk will be about tomorrow. It's really about how you can collaborate well with your developer or designer. All right, let's go to color. This is also a funky part. Okay, color. So when you're using color, sometimes you don't have a choice. What time? I will have to look that up. I think it was before noon. 10 o'clock? Okay, I'm not sure though. I will check that after this presentation. But I'm pretty sure there will be reminders of this. Yes. All right. So colors. Sometimes you don't have a choice in colors. Sometimes there is like a very big predefined list of colors you can use, and your client is very strict on this. Sometimes you're very free and you can choose whatever color you want to use in your application. But do consider connotations that are made with color. It's very important in these times that colors always have a connotation, regardless of what color it is. And a very good example of that is the political system in Belgium, for instance. There is a lot of colors that will have a certain meaning to certain people, especially when you're making a political application. So for instance, if you're doing something about elections, be very careful with the interface color so you don't really take a stand in that, if you know what I mean. But colors have connotations next to just the political system as well, and you will find a lot of different explanations of these things on the internet. But it's very good to know a couple of them. For instance, blue is something that you'll see a lot in banking world, because blue is something that shows security, trust. It's a firm color. It's not very emotive, so that can definitely help there. While red is something you will see more in dating apps or in things that are made with passion, or for instance, cars with speed. It's a very emotion color. Then we have green, which is more like nature, balance, growth. You can read. I'm not going to go over all of them, of course. But do consider that no color is 100% safe, and there will always be connotations existing. A good example of where you should be careful when using colors in interface is this one. Intensive greens and reds will give a certain stress to what you're saying. So as you can see here on the right side, there is a question that says, do you really want to delete this album? And you have two options, which are yes, delete it, and no, keep it. Which one of the two visualizations is right? Which one is a good way of using this? So you can post one for the top one or two for the bottom one. I see a lot of answers coming in, a lot of twos. The bottom, Meet says none. All right. I'm sorry for tricking you guys, but none of them is good, like Meet says. The problem with this is that you don't really know what is a good reaction to this question. It can be that the person wants to delete the album, and then the top one would be right because it emphasizes the yes part. It could be that they don't want to delete the album and are accidentally came to it, and then the bottom one is right, which says no, keep it. I see, Jan. I see your answer. Hopefully I'll get this next year. Yes, sorry, I really tricked you in there. But that's true for sure. You'll get it next year. I will do this one again then, especially for you. But the problem here is really that red and green are typical colors that used to be uh, linked to a connotation of something that's right, green, and something that's wrong, red. And you can see that in a lot of things like traffic lights, for instance, which red is a connotations of danger and no and something that's negative. So really try to avoid choice colors for interface, and especially the very bright ones, because they will definitely have the connotation of something good and something bad. So try not to use them for actionable buttons, for instance. Things like primary and secondary buttons can help here, but even they will give a suggestion to which one is the right thing to do, and you don't really know it in this situation, so try to avoid that as much as possible. This might end up in someone deleting their album while they don't want to do it because they're confused by the message and their own intention because they might not link up. Meet says, oof, I forgot about this part of the talk. Happy I got it right. Yes, definitely. Definitely. All right, so next to that, not only have you got connotations, but you've also got to test your colors, both on contrast and the visual impairness. Visual impairness is something that comes a very, very much amount of people. 8% of male approximately have a version of visual impairment, which is quite a lot. Females are more lucky. Only 0.5% approximately have a visual impairment. But do consider if you have millions of users, there's a lot of users in them, approximately 10%. So that's 100,000 people who will have visual impairment in some way or form. So be careful to test your designs always and see if they work. This is, for instance, a visualization of how it would look for a certain impairment. I see that Meet said something. It's like Zoom. Whenever I want to end a meeting, it always shows a very big button and for all, and it's not what I want, but it's what I click because it's big. Everyone gets kicked out. Definitely, because you're really steering someone to that button. That's exactly true. So be careful with that. All right. Next to that, you have also contrast checking. And contrast checking is usually very useful for testing whether your text and your background behind it have enough contrast between them to be able to read that properly. That's something you want to test as well. And there's a lot of tools to help you out on that. And I will show you them in a moment. Something I added for this presentation is graphs, and I noticed that a lot of projects use graphs and bar charts and stuff like that in their design. And what's very important here is that if this graph, for instance, on the left side, is used in your design, which is solely relying on color, and a color impaired person has to use this, and it might be that they don't see the difference or they cannot link the bar to each item. And this will make your whole graph completely useless, and that's really a shame. That you shouldn't be having that. So what you can do there is create different distinguishers there. For instance, like they did on the right side with the patterns. but also with placing the labels right on top of the bars itself. That's also a way of helping distinguish the different items there. This could definitely help you. Last year there was a very interesting talk about graphs from, I think, from Link. Oh, I would be very interested in seeing that one. This is very, very basic, but I hope you will get a notion of why it's important to do this. Maybe Link can do that again. Let's discuss that maybe afterwards. All right, very cool. Tools you can use for this. Stark is a very, very nice tool. It has a plugin for, by now, everything, I think. I think it works for Sketch, Figma, and Adobe XD. It has a contrast checker, which basically shows you the contrast between two colors, for instance, your text and your background of your text. And it will show you with the labels underneath on which like value it has a contrast. You can Google a lot of explanations for these labels, like the AA and AAA, what they mean and who they are for. For instance, if you're working for more elderly people, you'll have to have a higher score for it to work properly for them. But a higher score is always better. Next to that, you always have the blindness simulator, and that has a lot of other options there, like I showed before. So like you see here, there's a contrast version as well. So these colors might look very similar, but once you take away the color aspect of them, they all look the same. So it's very important to test that out in advance. All right, so then we have Stark, which is also a very cool application that you can basically use to simulate over your whole screen on a Macintosh. But there is also Color Oracle, which is an application you could also use. So these are all visual accessibility testing tools. There are many, many more out there, but at least you can get started with those already. Colorbox is a tool you can use to create color schemes, and I will discuss this one more tomorrow in the next talk. All right, is there any questions towards color? Are you still following? Is it still interesting? Let me know in the text, in the chat. Little response. I hope it's still interesting for you guys. All right, all right. I will try to keep it short. I think we're about 2/3 of the presentation now. I will try to go a bit quicker so you can keep your attention span, of course. Icons and illustration and iconography. That's something that's pretty interesting to go through. What are icons? Icons basically are representing a larger idea. They are interactionable and they are not immediately noticeable. Wow, I'm really struggling with words here. Icons are made to be understandable, functional, and consistent. So they're not meant to be necessarily pretty. They're not meant to be illustrations. They're really meant to be explaining one single concept very clearly. For instance, a light bulb for a flashlight that goes on, or a person for a profile icon, or an eye to see something, for instance. There's always literally, there's no metaphor in them. That's very important. How you choose your icons is also very important. If you're using icons in your application, you have to make sure that they're very consistent. I see Jan has reacted. React native vector icons. Vector icons, always, definitely, love them. But what you have to make sure is that you use an icon of the same style, so they look the same when you're placing them together, because if they look differently, that gets very messy very easily. Like you see on the left side, there's a fill icon, there's a thin line icon, and there's a thicker line icon. If you're going for line icons, make sure that the lines are equally thick on each icon. If you're going for fill icons, don't go for line icons, and so on. So try to avoid that as much as possible. We, like the medical device I shown earlier, a couple of things about, is where we tested a lot of icons, and there is a lot of things we got from the testing. So using icons in your tests is always very interesting, because some people have different thoughts about icons or think different about icons than you do. So testing them is always very interesting. So what we did basically is we used them in our prototypes, and we when they didn't find out what it really meant, we tried to understand why they didn't understand the icon as a concept. I'm going to warn you, there are going to be a couple of explicit photographs because this is a medical device. So if you are very nauseous very easily, I would suggest you to look away right now. Okay, hope you're looking away. So this is a photograph of a lesion, and that's basically a skin injury. We had to create an icon for that, like a type of photograph of a lesion. This is a close-up. It has to have a certain icon to identify them. So we thought, let's literally try to make an icon of that and make like a little blob in a rectangle for the photograph, but very quickly realized that dermatologists don't understand the icon at all. They really thought of dermoscopes much more when they are looking at these kind of photographs because they're demoscopic photographs. See, so they expect a dermoscope there. So it's something you didn't think about, but it's more clear for people who are using that in the real field. Same thing with the diagnose button. So we had a diagnose button there, which where you could select a certain diagnose for the doctor, and we were like, let's put a stethoscope to that. It's going to be explaining the diagnose, and they were very confused to why there was a stethoscope, because for us, like as people who have little knowledge of the medical world, we didn't know that they didn't use a stethoscope at all to create diagnosis. Um, but there was like an industry standard to it as well, which was a D in a circle. So that's what we created there. They don't even use stethoscopes. So if we put this out there without testing it, we would have a very weird environment for them. And the last part is a body part. And this one was a bit tough because we had a mannequin as well, which is like a puppet. But next to that, we also had body part photographies. So when we put this icon, which is basically a puppet, they thought it was a mannequin. So it was a bit weird for them. So then we tried to visualize it in a different form. And we started off like, let's create an elbow and try to visualize that. They didn't even see what it was. They thought it was like a kind of bacon strip on a plate or something like that. So yeah, that didn't work for them. We tried to go for a back on the second one because we thought maybe a back is more recognizable there. But also that didn't work. They didn't see it because of the box that was around it. So we took it away and suddenly they saw it. All right, then we have spot illustrations, and spot illustrations is a different thing. That's not icons, it's an illustration. And the spot illustrations are more focused on creating a concept and a metaphor, in that they are used to create a visual entry to a certain category, for instance, like you see here with studies. When you see this little illustration, you already know what this is going to be about. And I want to test a couple of things with you guys. What this was in an application for the job applicants that I said earlier. So I would really like to test to you. If you would see this illustration in the application, what would you think it represents? What element would you run into if you'd see this illustration? I see Jan says making an appointment. Marie says agenda. An event that has completed, says Ekfil. It's very close to that, because it's exactly like you said. It's, you've created an appointment, you set something in the agenda, you're planning something. It's completely right what you're saying, Lean. So it's an appointment made. This illustration is shown on the appointment made screen. So when you see this illustration, you know that it succeeded, and you don't need a lot of more context around that. Then we have this one. What could this possibly mean? Sending an invitation, message sent. Completely right. The email has been sent, so you have a verification in your mailbox. When you see this, you know already, you don't need anything else. So spot illustrations come in really handy there. This is the last one. What do you think this one means? Searching. Marie says searching. Axel says also searching. Lean says research, analyze. Asha says information. Yeah, it's completely right. It's searching for jobs. Of course, illustrations have to be used in a certain setting because it could definitely also mean research or analyze or search or information. Yes, Jan, exactly. It's searching for a job. Exactly that. Because this is in the context of the job search, of course. But this is really it's really good to have illustrations in certain places. Next to that, you have the scene illustrations, which explain a whole concept. And where you see this often used is in interfaces for onboarding, like explaining how things work. For instance, on the right side, you have the explainer for Bankcontact on how to use contact. Um, because an illustration shows much better how you would use it than trying to describe that in words, of course. It's much easier. So they use a metaphor or they explain a very complex situation. All right. So we have icons, interactable, intuitive, very easy to see, and they don't mean anything next to their primary thing. We have spot illustrations, which are readable, and they clarify a certain feature or certain section, for instance. And we have scene illustration, which explain a concept or yeah, something very hard to understand. Those are the three levels of illustrations and icons. There are a couple of resources you could use. The Noun project is something I really recommend everyone to use. It's for icons. And we have Undraw, which is an open source library for illustrations. So the Noun project, I'm going to quickly show you. So the Noun project, this is the Noun project. So it's the nounproject.com. The good thing about this is that it has over 2 million icons. At Open Knowledge, we have a license for this, so you can use them without attribution. If you don't have the license, you have to use the attribution, but they're still free to use. What's cool about this is that it has like an icon for everything. For instance, I'm looking for an icon for, what would I, can you give a suggestion what you would like to have an icon for in your own project? Kebab. Let's try that. There we go. We have an icon for kebab. It's that easy. So there's for everything, there is something out there. The cool thing about the Noun project is not only you will get the icons in SVG, which is the vector version, or PNG, whatever you prefer, and you can just download them right away. It's also very cool to know what another person would think when they want a certain function. This could be, for instance, interesting in what would people see as an icon for adjustments. I don't know how I should visualize adjustments. Oh, there we go. There's a couple of icons available. Like this could explain adjustments. And that's very nice to know. Like, what do people think about when you hear a certain topic, for instance, like profile? See, then you get like all these different types of insights in how people see profile, and this helps a lot when you're creating an interface and you're not certain which icon to use. Then we have Undraw, and Undraw is also pretty cool. It's basically open source illustrations, and you can change their colors. So it's very, very handy to use in your first prototypes. So if you need like an illustration to be a placeholder somewhere, let's say you're doing something with personal training, you can just download them for SVG and put them in your design as placeholder for your illustration. This doesn't mean that you have to use those open source illustrations in your final design though, because they are often used throughoutly. It's good to use as a placeholder, but it's always better to replace them afterwards when you have actual illustrations of your own, of course. Trash Panda uses Undraw illustration. That's awesome, Jan. That's awesome. All right, so illustrations to photographs. Wow, this goes fast. All right, what do you see on this photograph? Imagine that this photograph is being used by a brand, like a company that uses this photograph. What could they possibly mean by this photograph? And things you can really analyze here are the environment, objects, and emotion. So what do you see on this photograph? What kind of business would this be? Let's start with that. What kind of business would they see? He seems to not enjoy it a lot. Mailman. Yes, definitely. Mailman. Yes. Yeah, this could definitely be a mailman. And he is struggling, like you said. Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, so when you analyze a photograph, you'll see a different layers of the different photographs. So you'll see the environment, which is a very like a very snowy environment. The stuff to move through. It's hard to get through. You see objects, which are basically the things that he's holding. He's holding magazines and packages and stuff like that, and that gives you the insight of that he's a mailman. And you give the perception and emotion. And he is clearly struggling to do this, but he's standing there either way. He's really doing it regardless of the environment. So when you see this, who would you trust most to deliver your package? I hope you're saying the left side here. I really hope so, because your package will be in very bad condition. If the left is in B post, then left. Yes, okay. I see you're struggling with B post. But what you really have to understand here is that the picture or illustration says more than you could say. Like it's worth 1,000 words. So you really have to be careful when you're using illustrations. Illustrations, photographs. And this is why you should be careful with stock imagery, because stock imagery usually already has a couple of layers in them, which can give a certain aspect to your design. There can be layers in there that you don't want to be in there. And if you look at stock photographs, you'll usually run to these guys. And for instance, you want a photograph for your contact page. If you would place either of these two photos in there, would you be trusting that page? Would you trust it? Nope. Exactly, Asha. You don't trust it because you've seen these things over and over again. They don't really look realistic and they feel very fake. So be very careful when using photographs. Another one you should really look out for is Ariane. And Ariane is the overexposed stock image model. She can do everything. She is literally everywhere and she can do anything. I'm pretty sure you'll run into this person at some point in your time. You cannot unsee her once you see her. She does everything. She's one of the most used stock uh, image photographs models there is. More on the technical side, if there is no license on an image you find in Google, you cannot use it because by default, everything is licensed. If you find an MIT license, you can use it under attribution. Or if you find a CC0 license, it's public domain. And that means that you can use it and you can alter it and you can use it for commercial purposes even. You don't have to use attribution for that one. Websites you can find images on is like, for instance, Unsplash. Those are completely free and commercially usable, and freeimages.com. But there's plenty more image libraries out there which you can use, like pexels.com and other things. You just have to notice the license when you do this. This is a photograph case for Ago Jobs and HR. So as I said earlier, we made this application for Ago, which is about jobs and finding jobs. They are mostly focused on more hands-on jobs, but they have some office jobs as well. But here it was very important to find the right photographs for the jobs. So we started off by this. How do you feel when you see those photographs? Just imagine you want to apply for a job. How do you feel? Sad. Neat. I hope that's because of the photographs and not of the presentation. Not a fun place to work. Yeah, exactly. No, the left one. Yeah, definitely. Not very motivating, Asha. Definitely true. You don't want to apply for a job if you see this, right? This looks very frustrating. It looks very unhappy. Uh, yeah, you don't want to go there. It's very dirty as well. That's not going to help you. Okay, so we took a step back and we looked a bit better. Like, those people look a bit more happy. The environment is a bit more clean. There's still some smears here and there, but okay, it's doable. Do you now want to work there? Do you feel like they are addressing you as a person? Do you feel engaged to go work there if you see this image? The earring draws me in meat. Definitely, definitely. I can relate. I also have an earring. There's two. There's two earrings. Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. Still no, but just because I'm not qualified, I feel. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. In the Pocket is a great example on how to use company photos. Thank you, Jan. Definitely true. Definitely true. This feels like a real team meet. It's true. It feels like a real team. But as a person, you might not feel represented by this because we're showing two very universal, very universal, very, I'm looking for the word here, not diverse groups of people. They're both male, they're both in a certain age category. Uh, and it's very stereotypical, like Jan says, definitely, absolutely true. So here we try to like really focus on how can we get this more broadly, you know what I mean? Like getting a couple of more photographs which are as equally uh, team working, as equally happy, proud, enthusiastic, but also diverse, which is also very important in these things. So what we decided to do in the end was creating a video for our splash screen and having a lot of different imagery going through, so we could really relate to multiple people and multiple audiences. So that's what we tried to do there. So supporting and understanding the context is very important with photographs. Making it real and human is something you can do with photographs. So if you have a website and there is only illustrations or only text, it might not feel real. So you might want to use a couple of humans, like human photographs. But it can also just help in the visual aspect. It can brighten up your page if you use a photograph. Um, if you're thinking, wait, this sounds very, very similar to what spot illustrations do, you're completely right. Spot illustrations, or illustrations in general, and photography are very, very close to each other. But illustrations is way more focused on things that are abstract and hard to visualize in a photograph, for instance. And they can simplify a lot of things, which is also comes in very handy. Where you can use this, for example, is in a language selection screen, because try to explain the concept of language in a photograph, and it will be very hard. Illustration is much better at that. A photography is definitely better to use in certain contexts, for instance, like a recipe. I don't think you want to see an illustration of your recipe that you're making. You really want to see a photograph there. So that can definitely help you. All right, I'm going to skip this case because it's going to be too long. And I'm seeing I'm going over time already. So it's a lot of things. If you want to see this at one point, you can still ask me and I will go over it. The last topic, presenting your concepts. Was everything clear in the visual design aspect? Are you still hanging on? Yes, Ryan? Okay, awesome, awesome. All right, presenting your concept. I'm going to quickly give you some pointers which could help you in presenting your concept as good as possible. One of the things is placing your design in mockups. And mockups are very useful if you're creating, for instance, like a mobile design or something that will be used on a certain device, because that will like show it in context of where it's going to be used. And Facebook, I know I'm giving a bit of promotion here to Facebook, which I shouldn't do, but Facebook has a lot of vector devices with hands, like you see in this picture, available. So it's very handy to place into a mockup, and it makes your design look so much more professional. Like Jan says, definitely true, it does. Of course, if you don't like to place it in the hand, for instance, you can also place it just on a table, for instance, like we do here with the Colgate app. And this is all about recipes. So giving some context with your application helps quite a lot to understand what it's about. Like if you see this, you already know it has to do with food, it has to do with preparing stuff, and you will definitely understand the concept much better when you see the context with it. This was an application we created where you could talk with your suitcase. So by placing the suitcase next to it, you already understand way more broadly that this has to do with suitcases. So that really helps you. What could also help is creating a story there, and a story from a user's perspective. And that's something you can keep track with when you're creating your visual or your movie, if you're creating a movie for your demo. For instance, how Bankcontact works. The Bankcontact app with a QR code, for instance, you scan the QR code and you get the payment by showing the whole environment and the setting where they would use it. For instance, at a restaurant eating, you explain much broader to where your concept is going to be used, how your concept is going to be used, and really shows it in action. That this is an old version. Yeah, definitely. This is an iPhone 5, I think. This presentation is old. I'm sorry. But it also helps you with new tag, for instance. This one is a bit newer, Jan. This will help you. This is showing the 3D visualization of what she would see through her HoloLens, because it's very hard to capture what a HoloLens does if you don't see it. So this is kind of faking, but it also shows to the user who's not having the device what they would see. And it's basically a 3D visualization on the table. That's what they would see there. So presenting your concept really helps. All right. I really hope this was useful to all of you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in chat. And else, I would like to thank you. But I'm just going to wait if there's any questions rolling in. So anything from concept to wireframing, from wireframing to prototyping to visual design, iconography, photography, and presenting your concept. That's everything we ran through in this time. I see no questions popping in. All right. I hope it was very useful for you guys, and I will be posting a forums link in the general chat to ask you for your opinion about the talk, and that way we can really improve on how we do the talks and what we should be talking about for the next presentations. So thank you very much for listening and attending the talk, and I will see you soon.